Welcome to the Left Wing podcast in association with Aldi. Spend €30 in store for a chance to win €50,000 for your primary school. More chances, more prizes, more reason to enter.
O'Driscoll, Morgan, extra man is Fitzgerald. Oh, Fitzgerald is cutting back inside! Leinster have another! Darcy, O'Driscoll through the legs, Rob Carney out to Fitzgerald again, step and score, number 2 for him.
Hello and welcome to the Left Wing Independent.ie's rugby podcast in association with Aldi. I'm Will Slattery, delighted to be joined in studio as always by Luke Fitzgerald and Fergus McFadden. Lads, hello.
How are you getting on, Will? All good?
Good. It's been a terrible week for Irish rugby. It's been a great week for the left wing, and as we're part of the Irish rugby family, I think overall it's probably more positive than negative. We've been nominated for an award.
Extended family, I would say, very extended.
Kind of a second cousins twice removed.
Yeah. No, look, it's
we've been nominated for Podcast of the Year at the Journalism Awards.
Well, yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, delighted, absolutely delighted.
About
it's
time.
A lot of hard work from the crew. You know, it's not a 2-man show or a 3-man show. As Ferg reminded us, it's now a 3-man show. But no, it is, and we've had lots of guests that have helped contribute to that as well. But look, I would say that it's been a fantastic couple of years. It's been a bit of a journey. We've had lots of people that have helped us along the way. So thank you to those people.
We've helped the most, the two of us. We've been.
I think we've done a reasonable job. It's always nice to get a bit of recognition from your peers. So yeah, thank you very much for whoever.
Our biggest rival is the political podcast from the Inno, who did an interview with Peter Casey during the presidential election, where he went off on Travellers, which became a national scandal and a story. So I think that they're a big competition.
Yeah, well, listen.
To be fair, you've tried to,
I've tried to sensationalise it, Will. Is that what you're trying to say?
You've tried your best.
I have not tried to do that. I just have tried to be myself, which unfortunately doesn't sit well with some people. It sits well with others. So, clearly some people think we're doing an okay job.
Yeah, and I think that we'll know we have a chance if you get asked to attend in person. Then we'll know we're being teed up for something. But they don't care if you attend unless it's...
You're on TV now. I'm not even on... I'm rarely on TV now. You're on TV more than me.
Yeah,
I'd say you have a bigger name out there.
Well,
than
that's
me.
true. I'm not going to correct you on a fact.
So if I'm invited and you're not, I know we're screwed.
I'll definitely be going because it's a good piss up. But if you kind of get steered out, you should.
You still going to the free gigs, like the gigs with the free booze?
You should really attend. I'm not that famous yet. I can get away with it. If you're going to get steered towards attending, we know that we're really in the hunt.
Well, that's a big compliment, Will.
But I'm keeping the trophy. I'm keeping the trophy if we win.
Keep it, Jay. I don't even know. I found a Heineken Cup medal in one of my socks there about 2 years ago. So yeah, that's I placed no stock in those things. Yeah.
Well, enough talking about us. Now let's move on to the weekend that was for Irish rugby. I'm delighted to be joined on the line by Alison Miller and in studio by Fergus McFadden as well as Luke. So Luke, another World Cup, another premature exit for Ireland, quarter-finalists yet again. It was always going to be a tall task, facing the All Blacks. But
would you say premature? It's pretty normal for us this day.
I guess, yeah. If you want to put that spin on it.
Sorry,
might as well start with that's some gallows humour. We have to get through it somehow.
Sorry,
but
okay.
Ultimately, playing the All Blacks was obviously going to be very difficult. But we always said, remember we were here talking at the Six Nations and at the World Cup warm matches to heavy defeat to England as well, and we kind of said we'll only really know what these results mean and these performances after we get to the World Cup. If they use it to build on a good World Cup campaign, it was all about building towards that tournament. But if things don't go well, as they have not, it kind of points to a year-long decline from the high point of 2018 ultimately. Like, what do you point your finger on now at this juncture, now that the team is gone, Joe Schmidt has left the post? Why do you think Ireland have dropped so far from the heights of last year?
I think maybe they went... They stuck with a few people maybe that they shouldn't have, and it became too late. I think they were probably relying on last year's performance and trying to feed off that, thinking that the same individuals would be able to, deliver the same kind of performances and standards, on a very... I think that's a really consistent basis. I see there's very few teams that are able to keep the exact same team year on year without a few changes in key positions, whether that be age or form or whatever it is, and that can keep a high level for a long period of time. You always change something. You look at the Golden State Warriors, they bring in Kevin Durant, or you look at United, they bring in, Jaap Stam goes, David Beckham goes. But
I knew you'd have to go back far from Man United.
But I'm just saying, yeah, that's a fair point actually. But sorry, the point is, Will, is that usually, like, to keep a high level of performance, you have to keep adding in different things at different stages. And I think that's maybe an error. Now, look, at the same time, there isn't a huge pool of players to pick from around. There's probably 60 people who are playing regular, rugby all the time. So, it is a small pool. So, it is difficult. You do kind of have to rely on your experienced guys to deliver. And most of those guys have delivered for a very long period of time. But I just feel like there's a few of them that maybe they didn't change right now. And as well, I think, defensively, I thought the intensity, there was a big difference from, last year to this year. I thought they took less chances and gave themselves less time, particularly when things were going badly. Nearly in every single phase, they were so flat all the time. Looked like they were trying to play like a very much a possession-based game, but doing it under very high pressure, and it was very collision-based. I thought there were just a few things. Like, you could pick apart the whole game, but look, if I was given an honest opinion, and just from watching the games, that was my own view on lots of the things. I also, I would say there was a few individuals that, we've talked about for a long time in the show, that didn't deliver on the defensive parts. I always come back to this point against good teams that you're probably going to play against, if you're playing against a good team, you're probably going to play with 50% possession. They're going to have the other 50% of the possession on the most basic premise. I operate on that, so I always think, 50% of your game is based on how good you are defensively as well. So I just don't see, I feel like there was loads of players built up, very highly hyped, who just really didn't deliver on the defensive side of the game well against a really good team. And I think they need to have a good look at themselves, some of those guys. Look, we'll get into that in more depth as we go through the show, but they're my thoughts, since I've gathered them on since Saturday.
Yeah, what about you, Ferg? What's kind of jumping out to you? Be it just the weekend, which was a very comprehensive defeat, or just the tournament in general, or the year in general, which has seen the standard slip?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one to take for that group of players. I mean, you got to feel for them, and the amount of negative media coverage it must be very tough for those guys to take. But at the end of the day, it's a World Cup. The whole country's watching, and the expectations have been built so high that the fall from grace has not been easy. I mean, I don't know if I'd fully agree with what Luke said there about personnel. I think that maybe you'd have to look at the structures that were there as well, and were they the right ones to have? I know what he's saying, and there will be one or two guys that maybe didn't have the performance that they would have liked to have, but just small things like certain defensive things we did that there were obviously a plan going into the game, so not necessarily. Like even the time that Earls came in, do you remember that the
scrum on
they went really hard off the scrum and came in on the first
big
four.
risk.
That was a plan. That wasn't them. That wasn't Earls making a mistake or the lads making a mistake. That was a plan set out, but by probably Andy Farrell beforehand, and it was probably that looked like one that cost us. Reece got outside us, and the Bridges went down the wing and he very nearly got scored, and then obviously Stockdale infringed and Aaron Smith went over, and that was, we talked last week about the different avenues how Ireland were going to try to pick the All Blacks apart and beat them, and we mentioned discipline, we mentioned set piece, we mentioned defence, but also we mentioned the importance of the start of the game. And the start of the game just was, probably our worst patch, really, giving away that penalty initially. They kicked 3 points within 5 minutes. Then they score the first Aaron Smith try, and then the second one. And, getting any team back from that sort of a lead, pegging any sort of team back in a quarterfinal, that sort of lead is very difficult. But the All Blacks, it's near impossible. So it was, they
also made a huge amount. I thought Ferg, they made a massive amount of like really basic errors that they kind of compounded everything. Like the handling errors were really poor. They didn't hang on to the ball whatsoever.
That's been a recurring theme as well, though.
I think it probably ties into the other point about them playing very flat to the line and very collision based. Like there was guys looking for contact. If you looked at New Zealand guys, they're always looking for holes in arms, to run through, to get momentum, and everything kind of becomes very stagnant, and the pressure builds because you're getting slower ball off the back of it, and like lots of knock-ons. I will say as well, I agree with what Ferg said there. I think it's not all the players not delivering, but even still, when they made that break on the outside, like Bridges has nowhere to go on the touchline. It's not even a step, and he just completely leaves Stockdale for dead. Stockdale then gives away another penalty and then doesn't even give it away properly, lets Aaron Smith under him. And then like the other Aaron Smith try on the line, like you don't have a pillar in. Like Ian Henderson just keeps running around the corner without checking if there's someone around. And then once Rory Best feels the gap opening up outside him, like you've got to be in there. So like those two guys, like they're really basic errors. Both of those were snipes around, around the ruck. So I would say like, yeah, they made some defend the structures, yeah, definitely. But individual mistakes, like you can't miss that tackle. I know Bridges is a lovely, lovely balanced runner, but you can't not lay a finger on the guy basically, when he's running on the touchline. For an international winger, you can't miss those tackles. You have to bail your team out every now and then when you're playing at the back. And I thought he was really lucky to get away with that knockdown as well for the first penalty. Like I thought he had a really poor game again and looking for those intercepts in the wrong channel, when if he just made a good tackle on Reese in front of him, it was a 3-on-3. He had a chance to make a very easy tackle. We would have been on the front foot. Instead, they go get the penalty. So yeah, I think like lots of individuals will have to have a look at themselves in that respect. But look, I can't argue with Ferg's point. I do think that was a crazy risk to take off a set piece scrum against probably the most dangerous backline in the competition.
Yeah, I'll bring Alison Miller on the line now. Alison, I guess the lads have outlined kind of a litany of things that went wrong. It kind of points to a bit of a systems failure, from defensive plans to knock-ons to poor execution in attack to just there's so much to put your finger on. Like, well, what's your read on what happened and why Ireland have gone out early yet again?
I suppose, like, the one thing that, you read a lot that people are saying that they're not good enough. This team is definitely good enough to be able to get to a semi-final of a World Cup. I suppose I'm coming from a different angle. The boys have played under Schmidt, but like for me watching the last few months, especially from, I suppose, 2019, we seem to have gone much more narrow in our attack. It looks very regimented. It's very attritional, as the boys were saying there, that they're looking to try and run into people, I suppose, to use footwork. And I don't know, like the handling errors are just basics, but I don't know, the team to me just looks like it's very flat for whatever reason. And I feel like, the game plan in 2018 was working, but we haven't evolved, and I feel like teams have figured out, how they're going to beat Ireland. The pressure game relies on such a low error count, but obviously we gifted New Zealand possession. I think they're right about defence, but I think this attritional game is so tiring. I just wonder about if you're trying to attritionally break down defences, it's slow ball, it's attrition. I don't know, like, do you have the energy to defend if this is going on from 2018, 2019? It just looks to me like we've gone much more narrow and regimented, even since that All Blacks win. We looked at that game the other day, we seem to be moving the ball wide a little bit more. I think, there was a lot of defensive errors, a lot of missed tackles, as the boys were saying, system errors. But, like, I don't know. I just think the team, I was hoping during the summer the performances, you're reading into them that they're training in Portugal, that they've, it's very physically demanding, that they're going to peak in time. But unfortunately, it just didn't come together. And I kind of wonder, is there something going on, bigger picture, that, these boys clearly have the skill level, but we can't execute then. I'm just wondering, Smith talks a lot about detail. The boys have obviously played under him, but is the style of rugby we're trying to play too regimented maybe for the group of players that we have? Our style is not attractive to watch even. So, I don't know, it just seems to me that there's a lot of issues there in the background. I think Luke was talking about form. I would agree with him. There were certain players there that have just been out of form. You'd wonder about, obviously, players might be training well or playing well, aren't getting the nod. Does it affect team morale? I don't know. It just looks like I would have had definitely 2 or 3 different starters the other day. And I know as a coach it's difficult. Do you try and back your players that they get their form back and they produce it on the day? But that didn't happen. So, trying to balance, that you keep faith in a player, but at times we've probably shown too much faith in these players that aren't delivering, which is disappointing, really.
Yeah, the big one there for me is the style of play, because that's been something, even when the team was winning, I remember the players, bristling at suggestions that they were, dull to watch, or that it was too attritional, or it wasn't expansive enough, it wasn't utilising the skills of the players enough. That's been a criticism leveled even when the team was doing well. And it's just surprising for a Schmidt like or a coach like Joe Schmidt, Luke, who is so innovative and so highly regarded, that he has seemed to have gone with a pretty similar style for the last year. Like, he didn't change things after a poor Six Nations, after a poor World Cup warming period. I guess it's probably too late maybe to implement big changes then, but he has gone pretty much with the exact same style of play, well, from my vantage point anyway, and it wasn't working for a long way out.
I will say one thing about this, right, is that I still don't think the fundamentals of the game changed. If you look at what New Zealand delivered on the weekend, they didn't do anything too special. I'm telling you, they didn't. I know the try. Sorry, you could probably argue that the Bridges try was pretty special. The offloading, the turnover, the two offloads from your back row and your sub hooker to your winger, like that was class. That was really that was quality football, right? The rest of it, they just deliver on the basics so consistently. Like if you look at Ireland, they actually had some moves that would have worked really well. The try before half time from Bowden Barrett, Rob Kearney, he's clean through a hole. Like, he is clean through a hole and he ends up in Johnny Sexton's pocket. Like, it's unexplainable. Like, and, you can see Johnny Sexton going absolutely mental about it. He should have held on to the ball. He should have held on to the ball. But as soon as he gets that ball, all he's looking at is the outside winger, because he knows that he's going to fix this guy. If your man looks to go to Rob Kearney, I think it was Reese in the end who knocked the ball out of his, was it with his head? Like, if he goes, Johnny's through the hole. But if he doesn't, Rob should be through the hole, but he ends up in his pocket. Like, it was awful. It was a really, really badly run move because he's clean through a hole. So, like, things like that, they make a big difference. That was essentially a break for Ireland, around the halfway line versus picking the ball up from underneath your sticks after Bowden Barrett kicks the conversion to his try.
What about the overall style?
So the overall style is, sorry, my point is that the original point, that I was making was that I don't think New Zealand did anything too special. Like, even the backline move is something that we've all seen. It was that old Canterbury move out the back, well run but badly defended. And I thought the rest of the game, like, Ireland compounded pressure but just not catching the ball and not hanging on to it in contact, not putting on a bit of footwork, so they end up getting held up lots of times, getting turned over, getting the ball ripped out because there's two guys there and you're kind of exposed. I thought that was a big problem, Will. And, like, if you're talking about game plan, I would say we're talking about really tiny changes. Like, I would say, did they take enough chances in the tight exchanges? If you look at New Zealand, they consistently took chances. Even against South Africa in the first match when they were under the pump, they still took some chances. Look, they didn't go mad. Like, they still kicked it out when they were under serious pressure. But they backed their skills, and Ireland did that in 2018. They backed their skills. It was lovely interplay amongst the forwards. As Alison alluded to, they got to the wide channels. They were expansive to a certain degree. They weren't didn't go crazy with it, but they still passed the ball amongst themselves. I just saw way more of that, particularly amongst the forwards. And I just didn't see any of that in the World Cup. I thought they were way too flat. And if you can't dominate a team physically when you're that close to the line, I think it becomes really difficult. Like, and I think, look, you're playing against New Zealand. You're not going to dominate these guys physically. Like, you have to play against them, and you have to take a few chances. They take chances all the time, and they back their skills to do it. So if you're talking about game plan, that's what I think. I think we're probably a little bit naive, and I didn't think we picked some of the right players as well. So alongside those two things, I thought they're kind of key issues for the team. But they're hard for a coach. Bloody hard to get it right.
What's your reading of Ferg? Like, is there kind of changes that Joe could have made in that regard, playing a different way after, the Six Nations didn't go well, or after 2018? Because, as Alison said, the attritional style probably does wear on the players. If you're playing that way for year upon year upon year, it must get pretty energy sapping. Yeah,
I suppose we just tried to play them the exact same way we did when we beat them in November in the Aviva. And, as we said last week, the All Blacks are always going to go through that performance and say, this is exactly what we can't do, and this is the way Ireland are going to approach the game, because they probably looked at the games after that and went, the games that Ireland have won or played well, and they've done very similar things, put the ball up in the air, put pressure on teams on that front, done well at the set piece. And in that game in November, Ireland probably had the same defensive structure, but I think I said this before on the show that under that system, they go really hard within the 15s, but outside of that, the wingers are kind of off a bit. And if you can get the ball at the edge, you can gain an awful lot of ground. And the All Blacks did that straight away. I think off one of their first scrums, Savea carried from 8 and made a good gain line, and then one more phase, they hit the first pot of forwards, and then they went wide straight away and just made good ground on the edge. And all day they did. They varied up their game nicely. Then the second half, Mwanga had that nice crossfield kick to Reese where he nearly scored, and then Matt Todd scored off the next phase. So just the variety to their play was an awful lot better to ours. I think our players just probably reverted to what they'd been told to do, and that was, try and be really, really efficient and accurate off the set plays that were off scrum and line it, and were, probably thought that they were going to be enough to score tries, and I don't think that was on the day to break down the All Blacks.
Yeah, I don't know if this matters, Luke, but is it a fun style to play when you're there? Because so I know Simon Zebo's no longer in the setup, but he's said it many times that he didn't find it very enjoyable to play. Like for backs who like to express themselves, it doesn't seem like a very fun system. Obviously, when you're winning Grand Slams, it's great, but like when it's not going as well, maybe there isn't that room to express yourself.
Oh, I don't know. Look, I think we've got to be careful. Like Zeebs and Joe don't get on, and Zeebs, I would say that Zeebs is a guy I would look at, and I think, he had so much more potential if he just opened his mind to, being like getting involved in other parts of the game and trying to improve other parts of his game. And I would always think he's a guy who could have been so much better because he doesn't train hard. He doesn't go to the gym. Doesn't like going to the gym. So Joe would hate Joe. There's a clash of personalities there. So that's always going to be a challenge for him. Joe would look at Simon and say, like, why don't you just eat properly and train properly, because you could be so much better. And Zebo was saying, listen, look at my try record for Munster. It speaks for itself. Look at how good I am all the time for whatever team I play in. And there's a clash of personalities there. He's just a free spirit. So I'm not sure I'd be reading too much into that. I always enjoy playing for... Okay. I'm coming to that if you just give me a chance, Will. I just wanted to cover the Simon Zebo thing first because I just don't know if it's a good example. Okay. I found it brilliant to play under Joe. I think they're probably... do you know what I do think they have an issue with is that the two guys in the centre that they usually play, it's either a Key and Ringrose or Henshaw and Ringrose. I think all excellent rugby players, love watching them play, but they don't deliver much to the outside backs. I think that's a big difference from when we played in Joe Schmidt's teams with Dricko there or with Gordon Darcy there. I think that's a big difference. Those guys had lovely hands. They made very good decisions. I look at our guys.
I think the two lads have really lovely hands as well, though.
They don't use them for Ireland.
So do I.
Yeah, but that's the thing.
Well,
they use them for Leinster, so then you got to go. Maybe has the mentality changed from a coaching side of getting the ball to the edge and not as much as he used to.
It's a reasonable question
because the two lads have their hands are outstanding, long passing, short passing, the variety to that. But they're probably playing within the constraints of what they're being told to do there.
Yeah,
I completely agree with that. Absolutely, as in, you can see they do it for Leinster. Like we've had this conversation forever, Will. So I completely agree with that. But if you're talking about, did I enjoy playing under Joe Schmidt teams? I loved it. You got the ball loads. You had, Easton Asiwa getting you the ball. You had Johnny Sexton seemed to get me the ball all the time. I had, Darce or Dricko, getting you the ball all the time. So I loved it. I have no complaints about the system. I thought it was very expansive. I thought it was pragmatic at the same time. And I thought we were really able to unlock defences and always felt like a threat whenever we got the ball. So I felt it was good. If you look at it now, I look at it and I think, well, who's your third playmaker? Who's Ireland's third playmaker? It has to be either... That's why I think Zebo would be brilliant in the system, because I think he'd take pressure off the two guys in the centre, because for whatever reason, whether it's the system or the structure, whatever it is, the ball does not get to 15 in the wings very often in space. It just doesn't happen. So I look at it, I think, as a back three player, it looks pretty boring to play in because you don't get the ball, but that was never my experience in there.
Okay. Alison, are you going to come in there on one of those points?
Yeah, like they're talking there about 2015. Like it's definitely regressed in terms of how we move the ball and how our wingers are used. Like I was just thinking of this at the weekend. Like we've some very dangerous, elusive runners out there who don't see the ball. And obviously, if you're a winger on that team, that like I was a winger, I would hate that. Obviously, or any winger would if you don't get your hands on the ball. As you alluded to there, is this something that the players, it's within the system that they don't want to move it, or like they do have the skill level, like there's no doubt about that. But yeah, like I was watching, the French wingers were more involved, the Japanese, New Zealand, where obviously I'm not privy to the structure or whatever what Joe Schmidt wants the team to do, but I just love to see they're getting their hands on the ball more if the system allows that, because we have got dangerous players, but they don't see the ball. It's just, I suppose it's frustrating for them. It's frustrating to watch. I don't know what the system is that can they look for the ball at certain points because it doesn't fit into the picture, maybe?
Yeah, because Fergus, you mentioned Ringrose and Henshaw and their great hands they have, and you said maybe they get different instructions with Leinster than they do with Ireland. Like, because people do watch Leinster play and some of the rugby they play, and I know you can't say it's apples and oranges to an extent because international defences are obviously maybe a lot tougher than Champions Cup defences, but people do wonder why Ireland can't play in a similar style.
Just different coaches, I suppose. And the thing is, the likes of Earls, Stockdale, generally wingers that have played for Ireland under Joe Schmidt, scored plenty of tries and actually do get a lot of the ball. And for whatever reason, over the past, few months, there probably hasn't been as expansive style of play. And I think once you get into the multi-phase stuff where guys are having to kind of play what they see, I don't think players are as comfortable doing it under that coaching structure for whatever reason. Maybe too much emphasis put on the set piece plays and having to go through everything perfectly. Like sometimes, like even the James Ryan one where he's popping it up to Conor Murray coming around the corner, like you could have said James could have gone there, but I guarantee you he was told to give that ball no matter what, because they're setting up another play to then do another play, to score off maybe the third or fourth phase. So
can I ask, do you think players is affecting their mentality, even their handling, that they're, I don't know, are they bogged down in the structure? I know Joe Schmidt is known for a huge level of detail. Obviously he tries to, his style is to manufacture opportunities, but like as a player, does that affect them? Like it's a huge amount of detail,
Normally not, really. I think, some of the best Joe Schmidt performances that, I've been involved with for Ireland anyway have been ones where guys have been unbelievably prepped, early on in the week. So then later on in the week, all they have to worry about is their physicality and getting that right. But I don't know. I think there's a combination of maybe a confidence thing as well. Obviously, things hadn't gone that well before the tournament. They started very well at Scotland, and then having that blip against Japan that no one saw coming, and then probably not kicking on against Russia as well, and even the Samoa game, we probably glossed over that performance as well. Samoa were out of the competition. Were they really going to be challenging much? No. And it was well the boys did well to put that many points on board with Bundy a key gone, but history probably will show leading into the tournament that we weren't in the best place, and consistency is probably what Joe Schmidt has brought to this Irish squad when he's been doing really well, and we just didn't have that really.
Yeah, because I guess, Luke, it goes back to something as well that we said before the tournament started, is about how Ireland managed World Cups in terms of the length of time it takes, the intensity of it all. Like the players were constantly stressing the positives. Like Johnny came out before the New Zealand game and was giving out about the negativity. But like, to be fair, the results report, the performances report, people like, does that must have obviously seeped into the camp? That must have contributed to it. If Johnny's feeling the need to go to bat for the team, it's obviously kind of looming over the camp. Like, it seems like when things go wrong at World Cups for Ireland, it does seep in, and they struggle to block it out. Maybe
seeps into everything.
Yeah.
It's that doesn't change. Like regardless, like no one's impervious to this stuff. I think you do have to react to it well. I think they've probably had it for a while with this team, which has made it really tough for them. It's been everyone's been fairly negative about the team since Six Nations. But look, you hear there's been all sorts of crazy stuff out in the media from people associated with the team this week. Like no one asks you to take back the good stuff you say. So look, I never really worry about that stuff, and I don't think players should either, because it's you can use it as a bit of a fuel, I think, and I think they did fail to do that. I think
the right players will use it as a chip on the shoulder, actually, and I know Johnny probably said that, but I guarantee you he would have been using that as a chip on his shoulder as well, going into the game 100%. And the guys that have the right mentality in those situations, listen, you can't be riding the wave, on the surfboard when it's top and things are going great, and then when everyone's saying fantastic things about you, and then expect to be looking around going, well, hold on, what's going on here, when you're not performing well. That's just the nature of it. Like, unfortunately, with the interest level that there is in the country behind the team after doing so well, you know, and there's certain articles and certain things that are over the top, and I completely agree with that. But people are entitled to critique, and if they weren't probably critiquing as they were directly after the game, most people, you know, they probably would have just been lying about what they saw. So that's just the fact.
That's a great point, because you know, it's people get really sensitive about it, you know, and it's really hard. Like you put everything into this thing. This is months and months of preparation, and it's gone wrong for them. So it really hurts when people are pointing out. Like, they know they didn't perform. Do you know what I mean? But at the same time, you need the media to promote the game. Like, the two go hand in hand. We can't grow the game, promote the game. They can't get paid the big wages if there's no media interest in the game, drumming up kind of, you know, and exposing different people around the country to all these guys. So you can't have one without the other. So, like, look, I think, you know, maybe there was
listen, though, there's the fact that there was a percentage of it was over the top.
Oh, completely. But you're always going to get that for it.
And you're always going to get a few sensationalists out there looking for their article to get read because maybe they don't have as much interest in what they're saying.
But you're probably going to get that the other way as well, Ferg, when people are blowing smoke up your hole. Like, there's going to be 10% who are doing that anyway, talking absolute garbage when you play well, like thinking you're absolute superstars. Like, you're going to get that too. So, like, you know, I think it probably goes the other way as well, where you get people going, you know, like people, you know, talking about Joe Schmidt's era, like, just crazy talk. Like, this has been our most successful period by a long shot. We have never been this consistent for forever. Like, he's our best ever coach.
People are saying that, oh God, you know, what a terrible way for Joe Schmidt to finish in his era. The guy was the most successful coach ever for Ireland. He brought Irish rugby to new levels that we were never at before. He brought expectation to a new level, and unfortunately, with that expectation comes responsibility to continue performing. And unfortunately, we dipped before the biggest tournament in his Irish coaching career, and it is a disappointing way to finish, but it shouldn't. People that have followed rugby properly in Ireland over the past 4 or 5 years should not look at this and go, God, geez, Joe Schmidt, like, what a terrible. He's been amazing for the country and for the country's rugby. He has been, and it's a tough pill to swallow. But this All Blacks team is an outstanding side, and at the end of the day, if you're 5 or 10% off against them, they will do that and more to you. So
but they only ended up playing the All Blacks because they lost to Japan, a game that they should have, you know, for our money, should have won that game going into it with, like, the expectation that was there. So I think it's fair for people to question the 2 World Cups, because the 2 biggest losses of his tenure were 2 World Cup.
If you look at that one though, Will, and you have to look at that with a critical eye, there is no team in the world that you could take their best 5 players out of the team and they could perform at the same level. It just does. That's just not.
But this one, and there's no excuses.
This one is This is a bad one. This is absolutely a bad one. But I think at the same time, Fergus just mentioned it there. Like, if you're 5 or 10% off against these guys, they'll blow you away and they'll put a big score on you. And they don't let up. There's no let up. Like, these guys, they're 22 up.
The subs did very, very well.
Yeah.
And the lads did very well in that last, 20, 30 minutes to score those 2 tries. You know, we did very well to do that because with Robbie's try and then the penalty try as well, I thought the lads that came off the bench reacted really well. Like, sometimes in those games against the All Blacks, we've been involved, Lukey, in them.
It gets ugly quick.
It gets ugly. You know, we went.
Did you play in that 16-0 one?
No.
I did. Yeah. We had played against the All Blacks the week before, and we nearly beat them. They beat us. Dan Carter dropped over a goal in the last 3-4 minutes, and we had a long season, and our hearts were fairly broken after that, and our heads were probably gone in terms of it was the 3rd test of a 3-match series against the All Blacks, and they were only really coming into their stride, unfortunately, for the last game. We went down early in the game, 2 or 3 tries, and they put 60 on us, and that's just what they can do. And
they don't stop.
They don't stop, and we had guys coming off the bench that day who made it worse. But what my point is that I thought the guys reacted really well. You know, the likes of Reece Ruddock came on, played great. I actually thought Luke McGrath brought really great energy as well. There was a few of them, and that was encouraging to see, because it would have been a real shame if we were kept to nothing.
Yeah, and Ali, maybe just.
I'm going to jump in there. I might be going a bit left field with this, but, you know, obviously Joe Schmidt talked about the niggles that he had to try and keep under a wrap during the week. I mean, do we know who those guys that had the niggles, and, you know, what were these niggles, and if so, why were they played? You know, to me that sounds a little bit like an excuse. And I've obviously never played under Joe Schmidt, so I have no personal feelings toward him either way. But I actually feel like he's kind of he. This could be me now, but I feel like he's very different with the media than he had been. I feel probably a little bit more defensive than he would have been the last while. Obviously he's trying to back up his players, but I did feel at times there was probably felt like excuses maybe rather than just saying it how it was, that they didn't perform well, that there was maybe always a reason for something. There obviously is reasons for things, but at times I just want to, like, he talked about the niggles, and who were these guys with niggles? And
but Ali, we always complain about people actually not giving like reasons for, not giving interviews. Like, sorry, I always feel that I look at guys and say, oh, they were the better, what happened? What happened out there, whoever it is, and they go, oh, we were beaten by the better team. So don't want you obviously were, but like,
talking about niggles when you get absolutely toned.
But sorry, if you're saying that, like that, I think that genuinely could be a reason why. He's saying, look, okay, if you're asking me why I think the team hasn't played well, I think we probably carried lots of niggles during the week, so we couldn't train as well. So that's probably a reason, you say. But like, are you saying they're excuses or reasons? Are we asking for coaches to actually tell us what they think, or is it excuses? Like, he didn't mention anything about the game plan, but that's really hard for someone after to say, that they played really badly, when I'd say he's looking at the game going, well, they couldn't hold on to the ball for more than 2 or 3 phases. So what game plan? It goes out the window.
Yeah, and I suppose sports now, every interview you listen to professional athletes, they are boring because, do you know what I mean? So yeah, it is one, but
speak for yourself, Alison.
I get brain issues. But obviously, that is an excuse. It's a reason. But for me, it'd be like, who were the niggles? And maybe, did they go with someone that they could have gone with someone else? Like, there was some maybe close calls there. And if so, we've either built depth or we haven't. And, you either back your player or you don't. I know it's not as simple as that.
A lot of questions for Andy Farrell and the Irish team to answer going into 2020. Ali, thanks so much for joining us.
No problem at all.
Well, lads, I guess that's 2019 in the books, but looking ahead to 2020 now, and Andy Farrell coming in, who's in a bit of an awkward position for it, because I guess, there'll be a mix of what people want to see in the next Six Nations. I want to see maybe some new players, some maybe personnel changes that we maybe touched on earlier, maybe a slightly different style of play, more expansive style of play, but he'll also have to deliver results right away. There won't be much of a honeymoon period, especially because he was involved in this setup. Like, it's a very awkward position for him in a sense, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think it's an awkward position. I think that, with him taking over as head coach now, I'm sure he'd just like to draw a line in the sand, because, the attack shape that he's probably going to bring is inevitably going to be different. He's a different coach. And the backroom staff that he's going to bring in alongside him as well will obviously define what way the team is going to go on a defensive and attacking front. Listen, I think that, he's been back now as the head coach, and going towards 2023, there's so many good players in this country at the moment coming through on all 4 teams in the provinces that you'd like to think that we'll have a great chance by the time that comes around. But you're right, Six Nations does come, and people, a lot of the Irish public wouldn't look with the through binoculars and go, oh well, we're going towards this point down the line to try and build towards 2023. People want to see wins when they buy tickets to go to the Aviva during the Six Nations. They want to see good performances and wins. So it is a tricky one to get right, but I've no doubt that he probably will clear a couple of guys out maybe that have been there a long time, and he's probably obviously the likes of Rory is finishing up, but you just don't know what way he's going to go. Otherwise, he might try a load of new guys. Or else he might have mix and match, but I can't see him going with like a similar team to what played the last day. It's going to be a much changed side, you'd imagine.
I think they're probably going to be enforced on him, Ferg, aren't they? Like, as in, like I wonder, is this the area where we need to improve? Where you're always going to say things like, "Well, geez, we can't sacrifice, the team completely or the results completely." And financially, the Six Nations is extremely important to the IRFU. They need, you need to perform well there. All that money funnels down towards the future of the game, etc., right? But at some point, we've got to say, well, like, what's our goal here? Is it to do that? You know, is it to maintain a certain standard in the Six Nations, or is it to try and get over this hurdle of the World Cup quarterfinal? They've got to make a call on that at this stage, and I would say, looking at that,
what's the tour next summer?
Australia 2 tests, 1 test in the Pacific Islands.
Yeah, with that, I mean,
is that where you start? Is that where you do the overhaul?
Well, that probably leans towards that then. So yeah, you probably will.
But sorry, what I was going to say, Fergus, like, do you start off now in like the whatever, so November, whatever, and Six Nations? Do you start off and go, right, complete overhaul? Who can't make it to the World Cup? Who do I think?
Then you're looking at the main man, like the Johnny Sexton.
But these are the kind of questions that, like, you have to, like, so he's by far our best 10 and our best player. Like,
yeah, but he won't be at the next World Cup.
We don't know that, but like, sorry, at this point, it'd be unlikely. I think, like, he's talking about it, but it would be unlikely. He's had a few injuries here and there, but like, what decision are they making here? Are they going to do this now? Are they saying 4 years out, anyone who can't make it to the next World Cup, we're not going to consider you? I don't think we can do that. I think we're too small to do that.
And also, the Six Nations is too big a tournament, and his, we talked about Joe Schmidt's win percentage with Ireland, very, very high one. What is it? Was it 77%?
73.
In the 70s, yeah. I think it was
in the 70s. It was the highest. So obviously, for Andy Farrell's tenure, he's going to want to have as good of a win percentage as possible as well. So he won't be able to go into, games against Wales, England, France, in the Six Nations and try guys with the hope that they'll survive and do well at test level for the first few times. He's going to just have to go with. There's going to be, tried and tested guys, fair enough, but he's going to just have to pick guys on form, and hopefully that's something that he'll bring as a coach coming in, because you guys had mentioned, some guys are, on previous shows, some guys are getting picked from credit in the bank, and that is a phrase that Joe Schmidt used a lot. The guy's got a lot of credit in the bank, and he's done this and that for Ireland down the line. But I suppose if Andy Farrell's, looking to move forward as much as possible with this model of a team that is getting picked on form, and I think that's the best way of doing things.
Do you remember? Can I actually? Because I say this quite a lot about Joe. Like, it was the first time that I'd heard him say that is when he moved into the Irish camp. I remember in Leinster that didn't exist. I really didn't think it did exist. Like, I think if you didn't train during the week of big matches, he was just like, sorry, if you don't train today. And if you can't train, but I can't pick you. And he did that with lots of big time players. Like, do you think there was a change in the Irish camp on that stuff? Sorry, I'll answer it after. I'll answer my own question after you answer. But go on. Anyway, what do you think?
He did it with some players in Leinster, but then at the same time, it's the old, Luke or Ferg. If you're not able to train on Monday, you're not getting picked for the game on Saturday. Whereas, Johnny, Drico, etc. You can train on Friday and you're still can't.
Did he?
Oh, I felt he was more always there was always a pocket of guys that he was, but probably more so with Ireland.
I remember Doris. Doris got it a lot when he didn't train. Like, I remember Doris a few times where he was like, he was, I'm a little bit tight today. Like, he was kind of a tight muscle guy anyway, but he'd be like, I'm feeling a little bit tight. If it goes here, I'd be like one of those ones you'd be kind of shooting.
Joe did have a few guys that he did terrestrials, like the likes of Shawnee, Drico,
I guess you can probably get away with it a bit more at Leinster.
But do you think maybe there was more guys in the Irish camp? I felt like there was more people in the Irish camp in smaller windows, where training actually is seriously important to the Irish team because you've so little time together to get it right. Like, I felt it nearly had a bigger impact not picking guys who weren't training all week, or not picking guys who were playing on form in the short term. Like, I feel like that's a big risk to take. I actually think the results get worse for you. Like, in Leinster camp, you're together all year, or in Ulster, whatever place you are. Like, it's kind of easier to fit in because it's the same game plan, and you're doing it like from whenever you meet up in June to the end of the season in May. Whereas the Irish camp, you're in end of January, you've got 2 weeks, your second week you've got a match against an international rugby team. So, like, if you're picking guys on previous, I think it's a more dangerous strategy there, even though it probably seems like a safer one. Would be my view on that. You have to get really lucky with guys not getting injured before it or throughout the campaign, to be really kind of to have not tested anyone else out. And I think that's probably where they ended up. And they ended up in a situation where they had to have certain guys on the pitch because they hadn't built up the trust in the other guys in the big games. I don't know. I thought that was something that's a bigger. It's it looks like a safer policy, but it's actually not a safer policy to
There's
not
a
pick
good
the
point
guys.
about it being riskier because there's a smaller
less
window
time,
to get
yeah,
it,
yeah.
but,
Yeah, and another issue maybe Andy Farrell will have to consider is the policy on overseas players, which up to now has been, bar Johnny Sexton, extremely strict. Like if you're not in Ireland, you shouldn't be able to play. I saw Simon Zebo already getting into the media saying he's willing to take a call from Andy Farrell.
But he should have been at the World Cup.
But this is the point, like for you two, like would you lift that policy? Would you pick anyone and everyone?
It's hard to know. I mean, you look at the Scots obviously don't have that, and the likes of
Finn Russell
Finn Russell and
Hogg is gone now.
Hogg is gone.
Laidlaw.
And
Laidlaw, of course,
yeah, and it hasn't exactly done wonders for them. So I don't know. It's a really tough debate to have. You know, the rules are bent for Johnny because Johnny was so important to Ireland, one of the best players in the world, still is. So I can see where some players that have gone away might go, well, why him and not me? You know, that's a natural thing to be.
It gnaws away a bit at the principles, doesn't it? A bit like I think it gnaws away at like because.
But it's just a bit. I'm sure it's just for the likes of Zebo for him to stand so hard, you know, against Zebo, but then for Johnny there was never really a question asked about it. So it's a tough one. But it's different priorities. I mean, Joe Schmidt's priority was Johnny, and maybe it just wasn't a few other people. But I don't know. See, the problem with that is, Will, is that if Andy Farrell does lift it, right, loads of guys are going to go because the World Cup isn't for 4 years. So guys are going to go, I can earn, you know, another 50% on top of the salary I'm earning in Ireland and go away to different places, go to France, go to England, go lots of different places around
Japan, I'd say, would be a good place to go.
Come back with a year to go.
Maybe even that, and fill the bank account up. You know, it's a short career. You know, guys have to look after themselves as well. So if it was lifted, just the lack of control he'd have then over player welfare in terms of how many games they've played. You know, even when Johnny was being allowed to come back and play for Ireland, when he's being played at Racing, he'd go back for a weekend after in the Six Nations. He'd play for Racing straight away, and that's not good for certain players. It doesn't suit some. It suits some guys. It doesn't suit every player, and I think for the likes of Johnny and your marquee guys, you want to keep them rested up so they're really raring to go for the bigger matches during that period.
Yeah,
the reality of it, Will, is that you can't compete financially. That's like Fergus exactly alluded to. Like it's,
and once you break it, you can't really ever go back in it.
Yeah, no.
It's very hard to bring back in once you've broken it. So these are all considerations that the IRFU, I'm sure, they've gone over it countless times, and maybe they will be going over it again with this new coaching team.
It hurts Zebo. Zebo hurts the team not being that really hurts the team. Like he would have been 100% starting. The worst part for him is that while he doesn't like to, like, he's not a good trainer, and that he's actually a brilliant player. Like, and he's great under the high ball. He's an excellent kicker. He's got lovely hands. That third receiver I was talking about that Ireland need, he could be that guy for them. You know, so like that one looks like he could even be as important as Johnny was at this point in time.
I'd say there's a 0% chance they lift it.
No, they won't. They can't compete financially. Will just won't. It's not going to happen. They've decided that the strength of the game here in terms of the province is really important to keep your key guys here. It keeps the interest levels high, keeps everyone engaged.
Sorry, I thought you were saying it was up for debate. I didn't.
No, I say, well, it is up for debate. I just don't think they'll do it.
It's up for debate in pubs and here, but I thought the RFU
no chance.
probably
no chance.
Just. You lose that control over the guys, and at the end of the day, you know, Andy Farrell will be going around now once he's head coach to the different provinces, seeing what they're doing, and hopefully picking up nuggets of knowledge from the stuff that's working within Ulster, Connacht, Munster and Leinster, and, you know, keeping in touch with that S&C staff going, is the guy working hard? What are his scores? Send them through to me, his GPS, his injuries, to the physio. If you got sent over to France, the likes of Toulon, do you really think their S&C guy is going to be emailing you what they're up to? They don't even know what they're up to themselves, I'd say. It's all over the place over there.
So the French team can't even get the information from them. Remember Bernard Jackman was saying that. They couldn't get, they didn't know how long.
That's probably the last thing that Andy and the rest of the Irish coaches are going to want. So, yeah.
The structure's worked really well for them. Like, we've been really, really successful with it for a period of time. We always talk about Irish teams not having consistency. They
I think
perform
it'll actually
consistently
be
well.
also a shame for the rivalries within the provinces, because
big time,
if the
yeah.
best players go away, are the rivalries as deep? Do they, those big massive matches? You want the Ulster Munsters, Connacht Leinsters, Leinster Munsters, like they're the games that the fan base want to see the best players in the country playing, and when those players are over in France, England, wherever, it doesn't really make those games as appealing.
They need to play them in them as well, though. That's been my big complaint from me. Like,
But just
but,
on the structures, like you say, how successful it's been. But if the World Cup continues to be a failure,
depends on whether comes back to our question. Is it like
Yeah.
what do you do? Do you say at this point, well, is the World Cup our focus? Is it actually our focus, or is it actually the Six Nations? I can't answer that honestly off the back of some of the policies around it, because I think do you have a complete overhaul of lots of your positions? Like, I think most people who would have a target of 4 years would probably change the age profile of the team. Now is the time to do it. Give them as much exposure as possible. The guys you think can compete physically and have the potential, now's the time to do it. Like, it's not in a year out when we're saying, Jesus, how well is Jordan Larmour playing, or how well, but geez, has he had enough time there? Can we trust him? Conway, both of those guys played brilliantly throughout the competition. Dave Kilcoyne, brilliant throughout the competition, brilliant for Munster all season. All these kind of guys, you're saying, well, have they played enough rugby? The time to play them was 2 or 3 years ago when we were winning them. So, like, you have to make a decision, what's more important to you? And I don't think the two are, look, while I say that, the two probably aren't mutually exclusive, but I do think at this point now you're probably saying, well, like, who can we take to the next one? Like, give them as much time to be a regular starter between then and now, would be my view. But
And
I don't know if I'm right on that either, lads.
And jumping off that one, lads, it's going to need to be a new Ireland captain. Rory Best is retired. There's been an argument for James Ryan. There's been an argument for maybe Johnny Sexton or Peter O'Mahony, an elder statesman. Who would you like to see, or who do you think, or either think or would like to see captain the team for the Six Nations?
I'd love to see Johnny captain the team. I think, he was probably, just unlucky that Rory was going so well as captain for the team. I think that Johnny was an outstanding leader last year for Leinster. He showed that, and he also showed it in the game against Samoa. He scored the 2 tries and had an outstanding performance again. Yeah. I think that, down the line, the likes of a James Ryan will definitely be the next Irish captain going into whatever it is, 2023. But the Six Nations, going back to the original point of are they going to try different players in Six Nations, this or that, I think it's too important a competition. I think that James is an amazing leader, and he will be one for the team down the line, but I think the next in line to Rory was Johnny, and I'd like to see him captain, definitely.
Yeah, because it's just funny, just before I get your opinion on it, because if you think back to the previous cycle, like Brian O'Driscoll was playing 13 all the way up to the World Cup and then left a year before, which left them, scrambling to kind of find a new outside centre with really short notice. So you do have to get that balance right about how long you keep some of these, even if they're legends, if they can't play in that World Cup, how long do you keep them in the squad? Yeah, but
look, again, just to tie off the point, I don't know if I'm right on that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, have they thought about it? I'm sure they have. Ferg, I think, makes a great point. Like, the Six Nations is the bread and butter. It's such an important competition for lots of different reasons, right? So we're talking ideas here, is how do we get this thing right? How do we get to a bloody semi-final eventually? To answer the question on the captaincy, yeah, like, Johnny Sexton, I think at this stage probably will be the leading candidate. He's still the best player on the team. Peter O'Mahony, good candidate too. Couldn't argue against that. But although it looks like he's in a bit of a dogfight, I think, coming into the next competition with Rhys Ruddock for that 6 slot. He was excellent at 7, but I think he'll have to be in the team somewhere. But does he need to get that sorted before he kind of heads to the captaincy thing? And to touch on the James Ryan thing, I'd say it's just a little too soon now. I don't see any reason why 2 years out is probably not a better time to reassess this thing and say, well, look, who's going to take us to the World Cup? I would say that kind of time frame fits very nicely with Johnny. And
in that period, he'll still be learning off one of the best leaders of our generation. And I know that he only captained Ireland weirdly, like officially for the start of the week for that Samoa game, because I think he was interim captain when people went off for Ireland before. But you've been in change rooms with Johnny,
great guy, yeah.
for big
Very
games
well respected
for Ireland and for Leinster, and he really is one of the best leaders I've come across from the way he acts on the field and off it. So
he lives it, like he properly lives the game.
He's got to be the next captain, I think.
So we've pretty much covered all things Ireland. Let's just finish up on a quick look at the semi-finals predictions from you lads, because we've gone fairly long, so we don't have time to delve into it too much. But England, New Zealand, Wales, South Africa, 2 intriguing games. Obviously, we'd prefer if Ireland were in it, but England, New Zealand is probably the next best thing. It's a really fascinating game.
Yeah, but they've the best chance of anyone in the competition of beating them, I think. I think they've got the fitness levels, they got the individuals to cause them trouble. They have belief. The English guys always have great belief in themselves. Much as we slag them about it, and it works against them in lots of respects. They've great belief in themselves, and they do perform usually in the big competitions at World Cups. They've been pretty consistent all the way through. So, great game. I think the All Blacks will edge it, but I think that's going to be a bloody tight one. And this will be I think that kind of is the final for me. I know South Africa are good, but they just don't have enough, I don't think, to beat New Zealand on the big stage. So I still, my who I selected at the start, still, New Zealand. I thought they'd be a nightmare for us to play against. I thought South Africa would be a way better draw for us. I think New Zealand put in a tight one. The other one, bloody tough to call. That's going to be a cracker. 2 very physical teams. I do think Wales need Johnny Davies back, and they were lucky enough to get away. I mean, that could have been hairy enough there against France. For
that was a forward, that strip went forward. I thought.
Sure, Van Mahina's that was
crazy.
That was the dumbest.
So he throws the intercept and that tight game against Wales in the Six Nations.
Crazy one as well.
Which in the end
cost a match.
Well, Wales won the Grand Slam off the back of that. That was a game. It was the second, third match. It wasn't going well. It didn't look like they were going to win. A wet day. He throws that loopy pass, and then he does this. But God, for the coach, he must be, and even by French standards, I know they see some mad stuff over there. They must have just been like, come on. In the first half, he has an unbelievable game. Scores a try. Actually, unbelievable engine for that game as well. I thought he was going really well. Then that maul in the second half, Dupont,
it wasn't even
broke off
sneaky
but if you look back in the footage of just after it happened, Dupont broke off the maul and was about to either run in himself or give it to the winger to go in the corner, which would have been another 7 points. And Van Mahina does that. It's just it cost him the game.
Bungalow stuff.
But I actually think that
he retired.
Listen, he should retire.
He retired from French for international rugby.
Yeah. What age is he?
He's 28. He's only 28.
Yeah. Look, I don't know. It's
jump before your punch,
yeah, true.
Maybe,
it was tragic.
That was crazy stuff,
enough.
though. Come on.
But I think that I think South Africa are actually going to win that well enough. I think they're going to win by 10 points or so, and I also think that New Zealand are going to win by 10 points or so. I think that Australia were ragged in that match. And I know it was still in the mix until Sinclair got that try after half time, but there was just so many parts to the Australian game that were just giving England avenues in, and New Zealand aren't going to do that. Also, I think that the defensive structure that England also have, they come up very hard, but they leave space in the edges. I think the All Blacks are going to pick that apart. So I think 2 comfortable enough wins for both South Africa and New Zealand.
And last thing, I saw you tweeting about it earlier, the Jaco Peyper photo gate.
Oh man, come on, what is going on? Get over it. It's a silly photo with some fans, and the guy is I actually don't rate him that much.
Not even a lewd photo.
No, but in fairness, this guy's worked for 4 years to get to this point, and we're denying him an opportunity because he does a silly photo with some fans. I know it's not professional. I do get that, right? I get it.
It's extremely unprofessional.
But come on. It's not that unprofessional. It's a bit of a laugh. If having a few beers with guys after, it's just there's no way he should be denied an opportunity. It was a clear cut elbow to someone's face. He had no choice but to send the guy off. It doesn't change anything. Yes, he's having a bit of fun with some Welsh fans, but Jesus Christ, have a sense of humour. Don't ruin the guy's career over it. He mightn't get another World Cup. It's another 4-year cycle.
He's a really bad rev.
I agree with that statement too. But still, he's there.
Piper listens to this show, mate. Relax.
Seriously, I think it's a disgrace.
The best thing to ever happen in the World Rugby for him to take that photo. Just to get him out of the firing line. I think he's atrocious.
I think he's it in.
I leaked it.
Look, I will say I feel really bad for him because if he has an opportunity to be involved in one of the biggest games in World Rugby and he's been denied for a stupid photo, God, get over yourselves. France can't have no complaints about that decision. That's a clear-cut red card. Get over it.
Sometimes players, and I know what you're saying about have a sense of humour, but at the end of the day, a lot of the public and society in general, when it comes to social media and that type of stuff, don't really have a sense of humour.
It's terrible though.
But listen, the players, the refs obviously don't have the same responsibility off the field as the players, but it's not getting far off, because if you got the likes of Nigel Owens, who has such an opinion and is heard by so many people, he's got to represent himself in a certain way off the field. So, you know, when players have responsibility for this way that they act within bars and in social settings, you know, there's an argument there that they should as well, to a point.
Yeah, I completely agree. I do agree.
It's very harsh.
I just think it's really harsh. Like for one of these ones, like, geez, for having a bit of a laugh with a few guys, there's no way he thinks it's gonna correct. But the fact of the matter is, like, I just don't see why you torpedo a guy a big opportunity because of some silly photo. It's not like he's doing anything too bad. He's taking the piss with a few Welsh supporters.
He should get off, definitely. But I just don't think. I think he might get done for it, because that's just the way things are.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Social media.
Yeah. Well, a bad week for Jaco Peyper. A worse week for Irish rugby. Luke, thanks for joining me. That's all we have time for in the Left Wing this week in association with Aldi. We will be back next week with another podcast, and in the meantime you can subscribe to us on iTunes, SoundCloud, or listen on independent.ie. So until next week, thank you for listening and goodbye.
The Left Wing Podcast in association with Aldi. Spend €30 in store for a chance to win €50,000 for your primary school.